Clara Price's knees hit the frozen platform as the telegram slipped from her numb fingers. 5 days. 5 days she'd waited in the blizzard, her wedding dress now stiff with ice, while the town watched her hope die like embers in snow. The rancher who'd promised forever didn't exist. The money was gone. She had nothing left but the cold. Then small hands grabbed her shoulders. A child's voice cracked through the wind. "Please don't die, miss. My daddy's dying too, and I can't lose both of you." Sometimes salvation comes in the smallest, most desperate packages. Before we begin, please subscribe to our channel and follow this story to the end. Comment your city below so I can see how far this tale has traveled across America. Now let's discover what happened when a woman with nothing met a family with everything to lose. The bench at Copper Ridge Station had frozen to Clara Price's skirt 3 days ago. Now on the 5th morning, she couldn't remember what warmth felt like. Her fingers had stopped trembling yesterday. That scared her more than the cold. "Miss Price!" The station master's voice cut through the wind. Jedediah Burke stood in his doorway, steam from hot coffee curling around his weathered face like a ghost. "Train's coming through in an hour. Last one before the pass closes for winter." Clara didn't move. Couldn't move. Her body had made its own decision about staying or going, and staying seemed easier than standing. "Miss, you hear me?" "I heard you." Burke stepped closer. His boots crunched on ice that had been her tears 2 days ago. "You'll die out here." "I know." "That what you want?" Clara finally looked at him. Really looked. He had kind eyes. Probably had daughters. Probably couldn't understand how a woman could travel 2,000 miles for a man who'd never existed. "What I want doesn't matter anymore, Mr. Burke. What I want died the moment I realized Thomas Hartley's letters were lies. Every single one." Her voice cracked. "He described this town, described his ranch, described our future, and none of it was real." Burke pulled something from his coat. Not the silver dollar he'd offered before. A flask. "Drink this. Warm you up before you make decisions. I'm not drinking whiskey at dawn. It's coffee, strong coffee. My wife made it." Clara took the flask. The metal burned her frozen fingers, but she held on. The coffee tasted like salvation, bitter and harsh, and exactly what she needed. Better? No. Honest, at least. Burke sat beside her, not caring that the bench was frozen. "You got people back east?" "Had people. Father died in debt. Mother before that. Cousins who made it clear I wasn't welcome." Clara drank more coffee. Teaching position ended when the school board decided unmarried women over 25 were suspicious. "So you answered an advertisement." "I answered Hope, Mr. Burke. Hope dressed up in fancy handwriting and promises." She pulled the letters from her coat, 5 of them each more elaborate than the last. He knew exactly what to say. How I deserved better. How Wyoming needed women like me. How we'd build something beautiful together. And you believed him. Wouldn't you, if you were alone and scared and running out of options? Clara's voice rose. "I gave everything for this. Everything. My savings, my dignity, my last chance at—" She stopped. Saying it out loud made it too real. At what? At mattering. At being someone's person. At having a place in this world that wasn't just survival. The tears came then hot against her frozen cheeks. "I'm 28 years old, Mr. Burke. In my world, that's ancient. Used up. Done. This was my last chance, and it was built on lies." Burke was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood, brushed ice from his coat, and looked down at her with something that might have been respect. "You're wrong about one thing, Miss Price." "What's that?" "You matter. Right now. Right here. You matter enough that I've been checking on you every hour for 5 days. You matter enough that my wife's been cooking extra food. You matter enough that half the town's been arguing about what to do with the bride that man abandoned." "Pitying me, you mean?" "Caring about you. There's a difference." He pulled out a pocket watch. Train leaves in 53 minutes. I'll hold it for you if you need more time to decide. But decide something, Miss Price. Living or dying. East or west. But decide. He walked away, leaving Clara alone with the wind, and the cold, and the impossible weight of choosing what came next. She was still sitting there, still frozen, still deciding when the child appeared. At first, Clara thought the cold had made her hallucinate. A little girl, maybe 7, materialized from the blizzard like something out of a fever dream. She wore a man's coat that dragged in the snow, and boots 3 sizes too big. Her face was red from cold, and her eyes were the color of honey, and they held more desperation than Clara had ever seen in something so small. "You're still here." The child's voice was hoarse, like she'd been crying or screaming or both. Clara blinked. "What?" "You're still here. I prayed you'd still be here." The girl stumbled forward, and Clara saw she was shaking violently. "Please, please, you have to come with me." "Child, where's your mother?" "Dead, 2 winters ago." The girl said it like reciting a fact, like she'd said it so many times the emotion had worn away. "Daddy's dying too. I can feel it. He's dying real slow, like a candle burning down, and I can't stop it." Clara's chest tightened. "Sweetheart, your father needs a doctor, not a stranger." "Doctor can't fix what's wrong with him." The child grabbed Clara's hand with fingers that felt like ice. "You can." "I'm not a healer." "You're alive. That's more than he is right now." The girl's voice dropped to a whisper. "Please, I'm so tired of watching him disappear. I'm so tired of being alone in a house full of grief. I'm so tired of—" Her voice broke completely. Clara felt something crack inside her chest. Something that had been frozen solid since she'd realized Hartley's lies. This child's desperation mirrored her own, and in that mirror, Clara saw something she'd forgotten existed. Purpose. "What's your name?" "Josephine. Joe. Everyone calls me Joe." The girl's grip tightened. "Will you come? Just for a little while, just until I don't know. Until something changes." "Joe, I don't even know your father." "His name's Daniel Frost. We have a ranch 3 miles north. He built it with my mama before I was born. It's a good place. Was a good place. Before everything died." The name Frost fit. Everything about this moment felt frozen, suspended, waiting for something to thaw. Clara looked at the station. Burke stood in the doorway watching. He gave a small nod as if he'd been waiting for exactly this. 3 miles. I can show you. I walked it twice already today, looking for someone to help." Joe's voice turned fierce. "Everyone in town says no. Says Daddy's too far gone. Says I should go to the orphanage in Cheyenne before winter gets worse. But I won't. I won't leave him alone." "What makes you think I can help?" Joe looked at her with those honey-colored eyes, and Clara saw something that stopped her breath. Recognition. This child saw her, really saw her, saw past the abandoned bride and the frozen desperation to something underneath. "Because you're still here," Joe said simply. "Everyone else gave up. On him, on me, on everything. But you're still here, still trying to decide what's worth fighting for. That means you haven't given up yet. That means you're like him used to be. Used to be before Mama died. Before he forgot how to be alive." The train whistle blew in the distance. 53 minutes had become 20. Clara had to choose. East meant safety. Familiar failure. A slow death of spirit in some cousin's spare room teaching other people's children until she became invisible. North meant unknown. Probable disaster. A man dying of grief and a child who needed miracles Clara didn't know how to give. But north also meant 3 more miles. 3 more miles before she had to face the bigger question of what to do with a life built on ruins. "Show me," Clara said. Joe's face transformed. Hope looked almost violent on someone so young, like watching a flower bloom in a blizzard. "You mean it? I mean, I'll come see your father. I can't promise anything else. That's enough. That's more than anyone else would do. Joe grabbed Clara's carpetbag before she could protest. We have to hurry. Storm's getting worse. Clara stood. Her legs screamed. 5 days of sitting had frozen her joints, and each step felt like walking on broken glass. But she walked. Burke appeared beside her, pressing a bundle into her hands. Food, blankets, matches. His voice was gruff. Frost Place is solid. If you can't make it back tonight, you'll survive there. You know him, this Daniel Frost? Everyone knows Danny. Good man, broken man, lost his wife and forgot how to keep living. Burke's eyes were sad. But he's got that little girl, and she's been carrying both of them for 2 years. Someone needs to help before she breaks too. Clara looked at Joe, who was already 10 steps ahead, turning back with fierce impatience. Why me? Why not you? You got somewhere better to be. He had her there. The walk north was brutal. Wind cut through Clara's clothes like knives. Snow buried the road, forcing them to follow fence posts that Joe seemed to navigate by instinct. The child moved like she'd made this walk 100 times, and Clara realized she probably had. Tell me about your mother, Clara said, as much to distract from the cold as from curiosity. Joe was quiet for so long, Clara thought she wouldn't answer. Then, she was from Boston, came west with her family when she was 16. Met Daddy at a church social in Laramie. She said he was the quietest man she'd ever met, but when he looked at her, she felt loud. Felt loud? Like she mattered enough to make noise in the world. Joe's voice softened. She told me that story every birthday. How Daddy made her feel like she could be as big as she wanted. How he built this ranch just for her exactly how she dreamed it. How they were going to fill it with children and laughter and life. But I was the only baby. Mama almost died having me. Doctor said no more. She cried about that sometimes when she thought I couldn't hear. Not because she didn't want me, because she wanted to give Daddy the big family he deserved. Clara's throat tightened. I'm sure your father was grateful for you. He was. Is. I think that's part of why Mama's death broke him so bad. I look like her. Every time he sees me, he sees her. And every time he sees her, he remembers she's gone. The ranch appeared through the blizzard like a ghost solidifying. A 2-story house weathered but solid. A barn bigger than some houses Clara had seen back east. Outbuildings scattered like children who'd wandered from home. Everything buried in snow. Everything silent. Everything waiting. That's home, Joe said, and Clara heard all the weight that word carried. They climbed the porch steps. Joe pushed open the door without knocking, and heat rushed out like a living thing. Inside was dark, except for a single lamp burning in what looked like the kitchen, and there, slumped over a table covered in papers, was Daniel Frost. He didn't look up when they entered, didn't acknowledge them at all. He just sat there, one hand wrapped around a cold cup of coffee, staring at whatever papers lay scattered before him. Daddy? Joe said softly. I brought someone. No response. Daddy, this is Miss Price. She's from the station. She's going to help us. Daniel's hand tightened around the cup. That was the only sign he'd heard. Joe looked at Clara with desperate eyes. He's been like this for 3 days. Won't eat, won't talk, won't even look up. He's leaving, Miss Price. Right in front of me he's leaving, and I don't know how to make him stay. Clara set down her bag, took off her frozen coat, walked to the table. Up close, Daniel Frost looked like grief personified. Maybe 32, maybe 40 pain-aged people in ways that had nothing to do with years. His hair was dark, streaked with premature gray. His hands were work-worn, scarred, shaking slightly. And his eyes. He wouldn't look up, so Clara couldn't see his eyes. Mr. Frost, she said. My name is Clara Price. Your daughter brought me here because she's afraid you're dying. Are you? Nothing. Because if you are, you should know that you're taking her with you. Not physically. She'll survive. She's strong. But you're killing the part of her that knows how to hope, and that's a cruelty worse than any blizzard. Daniel's shoulders tensed. I don't know you, Mr. Frost. Don't know your wife or your grief or what you're carrying. But I know about wanting to stop. I spent 5 days on a frozen bench waiting for death to feel easier than living. Your daughter saved me from that. So now I'm going to save you from it whether you want saving or not. You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. His voice was rough from disuse, barely above a whisper, but it was there. He was there. Clara pulled out a chair and sat across from him. You're right, but I can make dinner and ensure your daughter sleeps warm tonight. And tomorrow I can do the same. And the day after that, until you decide if you're staying or going. But while you decide someone needs to keep this child alive, might as well be the stranger who has nowhere else to be. Daniel finally looked up. His eyes were gray, storm gray, the color of sky before lightning, and they held so much pain that Clara's breath caught. Who are you? I told you, Clara Price. No. Who are you really? Why would a stranger walk into this? Clara thought about lying, about painting herself noble. But grief recognized truth, and this man needed truth more than comfort. I'm the fool who believed a liar's letters. I'm the woman who spent 5 days waiting for a man who never existed. I'm 28 and alone and out of options. Your daughter offered me purpose, and I was desperate enough to take it. There's your truth, Mr. Frost. Not pretty, not noble, just honest. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, not quite acceptance, but recognition. One broken person seeing another. You can stay tonight. Storm's too bad to go back, but tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll still be here, and the day after. Until you tell me to leave, or until your daughter doesn't need me anymore. Whichever comes first. Joe made a sound like a sob swallowed too fast. Daniel looked at his daughter, and Clara saw it the moment his armor cracked. Just slightly. Just enough. Fine. Guest room's upstairs, second door. Joe can show you. He stood still, not quite steady. I'm going to check the animals. In a blizzard. Animals don't care about weather. They need tending. He grabbed a coat from a hook. Thank you for coming, Miss Price, but don't expect miracles. I'm past saving. He left through the back door, letting in a blast of snow and cold. Joe grabbed Clara's hand. He spoke. He hasn't spoken in 3 days. You made him speak. I made him angry. Not the same thing. It's a start. Joe's grip tightened. Please don't leave. Please. I know you don't know us. I know this is strange. But please. Clara looked at this child, this fierce, desperate, hope-filled child, and made a decision that had nothing to do with logic. I'll stay, Joe. For now, I'll stay. The girl threw her arms around Clara's waist, and Clara felt the violence of her relief. How long had she been carrying this alone? How long had she been the only one fighting? Come on, Joe said, pulling back and wiping her eyes. I'll show you around. It's not much, but it's warm. And we have food. Daddy won't eat, but we have food. The house was larger than it looked from outside. The main floor held a kitchen that opened to a living area, both dominated by a massive stone fireplace. The furniture was simple but well made. Everything clean but dusty, like someone had been maintaining habits without caring about the purpose. Upstairs were 4 bedrooms. Joe's was small, filled with books and clothes, and the careful disorder of a child raising herself. The guest room was spare but comfortable, and at the end of the hall was a door Joe didn't open. That's Daddy's room. He doesn't sleep there anymore. Sleeps in the barn most nights. Says the house is too quiet. And you? I sleep here alone and pretend I'm not scared. Joe's voice was matter-of-fact, like she'd long since accepted this as normal. Sometimes I sleep in Daddy's bed just so it doesn't get too cold, but I always get up before he might come home. Don't want him to feel bad about it. Clara's heart fractured a little more. Joe, you're 7 years old. You shouldn't have to worry about managing your father's feelings. Someone has to, and there's only me. Not anymore, Clara thought. Not if I can help it. They went back downstairs. Clara assessed the kitchen with practiced eyes. Well-stocked but disorganized. Food bought but not used. A layer of dust on the stove suggested weeks of minimal cooking. "When's the last time you had a real meal?" Joe shrugged. "Daddy brings home meat sometimes. I make biscuits. We manage." "That's not what I asked." 2 weeks, maybe 3. Mrs. Henley from the next ranch over used to bring food, but Daddy told her to stop. Said we were fine, so she did. They weren't fine. That much was obvious. Clara rolled up her sleeves. "Then we're making dinner, real dinner, and your father's going to eat it even if I have to force feed him." Joe's eyes went wide. "Good luck with that." "I don't need luck. I need a pot and some of that meat he brought home." They worked together, and Clara felt something loosen in her chest. Purpose, direction, a reason to keep her hands moving and her mind busy. Joe was surprisingly competent for her age. Could handle a knife, knew where everything was kept. Moved through the kitchen like she'd been doing this for years. Because she had been. "Your mother taught you to cook?" "Had to. She got sick real gradual, so she taught me everything before she couldn't anymore. How to cook clean garden-tend animals. Everything." Joe chopped carrots with careful precision. She said a woman who couldn't take care of herself would always be at someone's mercy. She wanted me to be at my own mercy. Smart woman, Clara thought. And heartbreaking that she'd had to prepare her daughter for survival at 5 years old. An hour later, the kitchen smelled like civilization. Beef stew bubbled on the stove, rich and thick. Fresh biscuits cooled on a towel. Coffee percolated strong enough to wake the dead, which they might need given Daniel Frost's current state. He came in from the barn as darkness fell, completely covered in snow, moving like every step hurt. He stopped at the kitchen door, staring at the scene before him. Joe setting the table. Clara stirring the stew. Steam and warmth and the sounds of domestic life that had been absent from this house for 2 years. "I told you." "Sit down," Clara interrupted. "You're frozen. You haven't eaten in days. Sit down before you fall down." I don't care what you need, Mr. Frost. I care what your daughter needs, and she needs her father alive, so sit down." Their eyes locked. Storm gray met determined brown. Clara didn't flinch. Daniel sat. Joe made a sound that might have been a laugh, smothered too quickly. Clara filled 3 bowls, set them on the table, sat across from Daniel, and picked up her spoon. "Joe, would you say grace?" The child's voice was soft but steady. "Thank you for food and warmth and Miss Price who came when no one else would. Please help Daddy remember how to eat. Amen?" "Amen," Clara echoed. Daniel stared at his bowl like it might attack him. Clara ate. Joe ate. Daniel didn't move. "The stew's not poisoned, Mr. Frost." "I know." "Then eat it." "I'm not hungry." "Eat anyway. Your daughter's watching you starve yourself, and that's a cruelty you don't get to pretend isn't happening." His hand shook as he picked up the spoon. He took 1 bite, then another. Then he stopped trying to pretend he wasn't desperately hungry and ate like a man who'd forgotten what food tasted like. Joe watched him with tears streaming silently down her face. When Daniel finally stopped his bowl empty, he looked at Clara with something that might have been gratitude or might have been anger. "Thank you." "You're welcome. This doesn't change anything." "Doesn't have to. Eat again tomorrow. That's enough." He stood, grabbed his coat, and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" "Barn. I sleep there." "It's below freezing." "I know. Mr. Frost." "Don't." His voice cracked. "Don't try to fix this. You can stay. You can help Joe, but don't try to fix me. I'm too broken for fixing." He left. Joe wilted, her tears coming faster now. Clara pulled the child close. "It's all right." "It's not. He's leaving. He's dying right in front of me, and I can't stop it." "You can't. But maybe together we can slow it down long enough for him to remember why staying matters." Clara stroked Joe's hair, and the girl leaned into the comfort like she'd been starving for it. "I can't promise miracles, Joe, but I promise I won't give up easily. Deal?" Deal. That night, Clara lay in the guest room listening to the house settle, listening to Joe crying softly down the hall, listening to the wind howl like all the grief in the world had found voice. She'd come here by accident, by desperation, by one child's fierce refusal to let go. But lying there in the dark, Clara realized something had shifted. She wasn't waiting anymore, wasn't frozen on a bench deciding between living and dying. She was here, in this house, with this broken family. And maybe broken things could be mended if someone was stubborn enough to try. Outside in the barn, Daniel Frost sat in the cold and tried to remember why he was still breathing. His hands shook. They always shook now. Too much grief. Too much weight. Anna would be so disappointed in him. Anna with her laughter and her fierce love, and her absolute certainty that life was worth living even when it hurt. But Anna was gone. Had been gone for 2 years, and every day since felt like drowning in slow motion. That woman Clara Price had seen it, seen straight through him to the core that wanted to stop, wanted to let go, wanted to follow Anna wherever she'd gone. But Joe with Anna's eyes and his stubborn chin and her mother's fierce determination to keep loving even when love brought nothing but pain. He couldn't leave Joe, wouldn't leave Joe, but he didn't know how to stay. Daniel pulled Anna's shawl from where he kept it hidden in the hay, pressed it to his face. It didn't smell like her anymore. Hadn't for months. But he pretended. Tomorrow, he thought. Tomorrow, he'd ask Clara Price to leave. Get back to whatever life she'd come from. Stop trying to resurrect things better left buried. Tomorrow. But for tonight, he'd stay here in the cold and remember what warmth felt like. And in the house, Clara Price made a decision that would change 3 lives forever. She wasn't leaving. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Not until Daniel Frost remembered how to be alive, or until she'd given everything she had trying. The blizzard raged on, but inside, something had begun to thaw. Clara woke to silence so complete it felt like the world had stopped breathing. For a moment, she forgot where she was, forgot the frozen bench, the desperate child, the broken man in the barn. Then the cold seeped through the quilts, and memory crashed back like a fist to the chest. She dressed quickly in yesterday's clothes, still damp from snow. Her reflection in the small mirror showed a woman she barely recognized. Hair tangled, face drawn, eyes that had seen too much in too short a time. Downstairs, Joe was already awake feeding logs into the fireplace with the mechanical efficiency of someone who'd done this every morning for 2 years. "Did you sleep?" Joe jumped, dropping a log. "Some. You? Enough." Clara moved to the kitchen, assessing what needed doing. Everything. "Has your father come in yet?" "No. He won't. Not until he thinks I'm still sleeping." Joe's voice was flat, reciting facts. "He checks the animals, fixes whatever broke overnight, then hides until he can't avoid me anymore. That stops today." "Miss Price." "It stops today," Clara repeated, pulling on her still frozen coat. "Where's the barn? You can't just watch me." The cold outside hit like a slap. Clara's lungs seized, and for a moment she understood why people simply gave up in weather like this. Every breath hurt. Every step was a battle. The barn loomed ahead larger than some churches she'd seen back east. She pushed through the door and found Daniel exactly where she'd expected him. Sitting on a hay bale, hands wrapped around nothing, staring at something only he could see. "Mr. Frost." He didn't look up. "Thought I told you not to try fixing me." "I'm not here to fix you. I'm here to tell you that your daughter hasn't slept through a full night in 2 years, that she's raising herself while you hide from the fact that she looks like her mother, that she's drowning, and you're too busy drowning yourself to notice." Now he looked up. Anger flashed in those gray eyes, and Clara was glad. Anger was better than the empty nothing she'd seen last night. "You've been here one day. One. Don't pretend you understand. I understand that grief is heavy. I understand wanting to stop. I understand that living hurts more than dying would." Clara stepped closer. "But I also understand that child in that house is trying to carry both of you, and she's 7 years old, Mr. Frost. 7. And you're letting her." Daniel stood, and Clara realized how tall he was, how broad, how easy it would be for him to intimidate her into backing down. She held her ground. "Get out of my barn." "No." "I said, I heard what you said, and I'm saying no. I'm staying. I'm helping Joe. And you're going to stop sleeping in a frozen barn like some martyr and start acting like the father she deserves." His jaw clenched. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Then explain it to me. Explain how letting your daughter watch you die of grief is somehow noble. Explain how abandoning her to care for herself is somehow justified because you miss your wife." "Don't you dare." "Your wife died. Your daughter is dying. Which one are you going to choose?" The silence that followed felt like lightning about to strike. Daniel's hands curled into fists. His whole body shook, and Clara wasn't sure if it was rage or cold or both. "You have no right." "I have every right. Joe gave it to me when she begged me to save you. So I'm going to stand here until you decide. Her or the ghost. Choose." "It's not that simple." "It is exactly that simple. Love her or lose her. Those are your options." Daniel turned away, shoulders heaving. When he spoke again, his voice was barely audible. "I don't know how." "How to what?" "How to be her father without seeing Anna. How to look at her without remembering. How to love what's left when what's lost was everything." Clara felt her anger crack. Underneath was something softer, something that understood. "You do it anyway. You look at Joe and see Anna, and you love them both. You remember what you lost, and you fight for what remains. You hurt every single day, and you get up anyway. That's how." "I'm so tired." The admission broke something in Clara. This man wasn't refusing to try. He was too exhausted to know where to start. "Then let me help. Not forever. Just until you remember how." She softened her voice. "Come inside, Mr. Frost. Eat breakfast. Talk to your daughter. 1 hour. If it's unbearable, you can come back out here and freeze. But give her 1 hour." "Why do you care? You don't know us." "I care because Joe asked me to. Because no one asked for me, and I remember how that feels. Because maybe if I help someone else's broken family, I won't feel so broken myself." Daniel studied her for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. 1 hour. 1 hour. They walked back to the house together, not speaking. Clara pushed open the door to find Joe standing at the stove, her back rigid with tension. "Daddy!" Daniel stopped. Clara saw him struggle, saw the moment he almost turned and ran. Then he forced himself forward. "Morning, Joe Bug." The child's face transformed. That one word, that stupid nickname, undid her completely. She ran to him, and he caught her, and they stood there holding each other like survivors of separate shipwrecks who'd found each other in the wreckage. "You came inside," Joe whispered. "You actually came inside." "For breakfast. Miss Price said you made breakfast." "I can. I mean I will. I mean—" Joe pulled back, swiping at her eyes. "Sit down. I'll make eggs, and bacon, and coffee. Lots of coffee." Daniel sat at the table looking uncomfortable in his own kitchen. Clara joined him, giving him no space to retreat. Joe cooked with frantic energy, talking nonstop, like if she stopped the spell would break. She talked about the chickens, the weather, a book she was reading, anything and everything except the elephant in the room. Her father was actually present. They ate in careful silence, each bite feeling like diffusing a bomb. One wrong word, and Daniel would bolt. Clara could see it in the tension of his shoulders, the way his eyes kept drifting to the door. "The animals need tending," he said, finally pushing back from the table. "Storm damaged the fence in the south pasture. Have to fix it before—" "I'll help," Clara heard herself say. Both Frosts stared at her. You'll what? Daniel asked. Help. With the fence. You can't do it alone in this weather. Miss Price, you're a woman, I noticed, but I have 2 hands and I follow instructions. Unless you'd rather Joe help you, which means leaving her alone in the house while you're both out in a blizzard. She'd trapped him neatly, and they both knew it. Fine, but don't complain when you freeze. I spent 5 days on a frozen bench waiting for a lie. I think I can handle your fence. Joe looked between them with something that might have been hope or might have been terror. An hour later, Clara understood what cold really meant. The kind of cold that made her earlier suffering feel like mild discomfort. Wind cut through every layer she wore. Snow blinded her. And the brutal, endless work of digging out fence posts and resetting them made every muscle scream. Daniel worked without speaking, moving with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. He didn't help her when she struggled. Didn't slow down. Just kept working. Like if he stopped, he'd remember he was supposed to feel something. Why are you really here? His question came after an hour of silence. Clara drove her shovel into frozen ground, trying to catch her breath. I told you why. You told me a story. About letters and disappointment and nowhere else to go. But that doesn't explain why you're standing in a blizzard fixing a stranger's fence when you could be on a train heading somewhere warm. Maybe I don't know warm anymore. That's not an answer. Clara stopped working, looked at him directly. Fine. You want the truth. I came here because your daughter looked at me like I mattered. Like my existence had purpose beyond being a cautionary tale. No one's looked at me like that in years, Mr. Frost. So I followed her home like a stray dog, and now I'm too stubborn to leave until I've earned that look. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then, call me Daniel. If you're going to freeze to death fixing my fence, least you can do is use my given name. Clara. I know. Joe told me approximately 47 times last night. Despite everything, Clara almost smiled. She talks about you constantly. I know. She's terrified of losing you. I know that too. Then why? Because every time I look at her, I see Anna dying. See her getting weaker and sicker and me being completely helpless to stop it. See her last breath and the way Joe screamed when she realized her mother was gone. Daniel's voice went rough. And I can't go through that again. I can't watch Joe grow up and get sick and leave me like Anna did, so I'm leaving first, before I love her so much that losing her destroys whatever's left of me. Clara felt the air leave her lungs. That's the most cowardly thing I've ever heard. Daniel's head snapped up. Excuse me. You heard me. You're abandoning your daughter because you're afraid of losing her someday. You're punishing her for looking like her mother. You're choosing grief over love because grief feels safer, and that makes you a coward. You don't understand. I understand that Anna died, and that was a tragedy. But you're killing Joe right now today while she's still alive and begging you to love her. That's not tragedy. That's choice. Your choice. Daniel dropped his shovel. For a moment, Clara thought he might hit her. His hands shook. His jaw clenched. His whole body coiled with rage. Then he turned and walked away. Just walked away into the blizzard, without coat or gloves or any sense of self-preservation. Daniel! Clara ran after him. Daniel, stop! He kept walking. Clara caught up, grabbed his arm, and he whirled on her with such fury she stumbled back. You want to know why I can't look at her? Why I can't be what she needs? Yes, because I prayed. His voice cracked. I prayed every day while Anna was dying. Begged God to take me instead. Promised anything if he'd just let her live. And he didn't. He took her and left me, and now every morning I wake up is another day Anna doesn't get. Every time Joe laughs, I hear Anna's laugh. Every time she cries, I remember how Anna cried when she knew she was dying and leaving our baby alone. The words poured out like poison being drained from a wound. She made me promise. Anna made me promise I'd take care of Joe, that I'd love her enough for both of us. that I'd make sure she never felt alone. Daniel's eyes filled. And I can't. I'm failing at the one thing Anna asked of me, and I don't know how to stop failing. Clara grabbed his arms. Then stop trying to do it alone. Let me help. Let your neighbors help. Let Jo help, because she's stronger than you think. I can't ask that of you. You're not asking. I'm offering. There's a difference. Why would you do this? Because Jo asked me to. Because I have nowhere else to be. Because maybe... Clara's voice broke. Because maybe if I save your family, it'll make up for the fact that I couldn't save mine. Daniel stared at her. What happened to your family? My mother died when I was 15. Consumption. My father drank himself to death 2 years later, leaving nothing but debt. I taught school for 8 years, saving every penny for a future that never came. Then the school board decided unmarried women my age were inappropriate, and I lost even that. Clara felt tears freeze on her cheeks. So I answered an advertisement from a man who promised me everything and turned out to be nothing. And I sat on a bench waiting to die until your daughter gave me a reason not to. That's my story, Daniel. Not pretty, not noble. But it's why I'm here. Why I'm staying. The wind howled around them. Snow fell. And 2 broken people stood in the middle of nowhere, recognizing each other's wounds. We should get back, Daniel said finally, before we both freeze. Is that a yes to letting me help? It's a maybe, which is more than I've managed in 2 years. They returned to the fence, worked in silence. But something had shifted. Clara couldn't name it, but it was there, the smallest crack in the wall Daniel had built around himself. By the time they finished, Clara's hands were bleeding. The cold had made them clumsy, and barbed wire was unforgiving. Daniel saw the blood and swore. Why didn't you say something? Because saying something meant stopping, and stopping meant going back before the work was done. He grabbed her hands, surprisingly gentle. You're bleeding through your gloves. I've had worse. That's not comforting. Daniel started walking, pulling her with him. Come on, we need to get those cleaned before they get infected. Back at the house, Jo took one look at Clara's hands and burst into tears. What happened? Did Daddy hurt you? Did he? I hurt myself being stubborn, Clara interrupted. Your father's trying to help. Daniel had already filled a basin with warm water. Sit. Clara sat. He unwrapped her hands with the focus of someone who'd done this before. The warm water stung viciously, and Clara hissed. Sorry. Don't be. I earned this. Jo hovered nearby, wringing her own hands. Miss Price, you didn't have to... Yes, I did. And call me Clara. Miss Price makes me feel like I'm still teaching school. Daniel cleaned the cuts carefully, his scarred hands steady despite everything. You're going to have scars. Good. I'll have earned something from this. He looked up at her, and their eyes met. For just a moment, Clara saw past the grief to the man underneath. The man Anna had loved. The man Jo needed him to remember being. Thank you, he said quietly. For the fence, for Jo. For not giving up when any sane person would have. Who said I was sane? Daniel's lips twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. Jo noticed. Her whole face lit up. Daddy, you almost smiled. Don't push your luck, Joe Bug. But you did. You almost smiled at Clara. The use of her first name made Clara's chest tight. Jo had decided she was staying. Had decided she was safe enough to name. The rest of the day passed in careful domesticity. Clara cooked while Jo did schoolwork lessons she'd been teaching herself from old primers. Daniel disappeared periodically to tend animals, but he came back. Every time. And each return felt like a small victory. That night, after Jo was in bed, Clara found Daniel in the kitchen, staring at a letter. What's that? He jumped, clearly not expecting her. Nothing. Doesn't look like nothing. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then, "It's from Anna. She wrote it before she died. One for every year of Joe's life, until she turns 18. Clara's breath caught. "You've been reading them. This is the first one, for Joe's 7th birthday. Anna wanted me to wait until Joe could understand, then give them to her one at a time." His hands shook. "Her birthday's in 3 days. Are you going to give it to her?" "I don't know. Reading it means accepting Anna's really gone, that these letters are all that's left." Clara sat beside him. "Can I tell you something? Can I stop you?" "No. When my mother died, I was angry, furious that she'd left me alone with my father's grief. I refused to go through her things, wouldn't wear her dresses, threw away her jewelry, because looking at it hurt too much." "What changed?" "Nothing changed. I lost everything anyway. The dresses were sold to pay my father's debts. The jewelry went to creditors, and I was left with nothing but regret that I'd wasted the time I had being angry instead of remembering why I loved her." Daniel looked at the letter. "Anna would want Joe to have these." "Yes, she would. But giving them to her means I'm really alone, that Anna's not coming back and I have to figure out how to live with that." "You're not alone. You have Joe. You have neighbors who care. You have a stubborn woman who refuses to leave until you remember how to be alive." Clara touched his arm gently. "And maybe that's enough. Maybe you don't need everything Anna was. Maybe you just need to be what Joe needs right now." Daniel closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were wet. "I don't know if I can." "Then we'll find out together." The next 2 days passed in a rhythm that felt almost normal. Clara cooked and cleaned. Daniel worked the ranch. Joe floated between them like a bridge connecting two people who didn't quite know how to connect themselves. But Joe's birthday loomed, and with it the decision about Anna's letter. Clara found Daniel in the barn the night before, holding the envelope like it might burn him. Having second thoughts. Having all the thoughts. He looked exhausted. What if reading her words breaks me completely? What if I can't hold it together for Joe? Then you break. And you let Joe see that loving her mother still hurts. And you show her that it's okay to break as long as you put yourself back together after. You make it sound simple. It's not simple, it's just necessary. Daniel was quiet. Then, will you be there tomorrow when I give it to her? If you want me there. I want you there. Joe will want you there. And He stopped. Started again. I don't think I can do this alone. You don't have to. That's what I keep trying to tell you. Joe's birthday dawned clear and cold. Clara made the child's favorite breakfast pancakes with preserved berries from the cellar. Joe's excitement was tempered by confusion. Daddy remembered? Of course I remembered. Daniel's voice was rough. It's your birthday, Joe Bug. I always remember. But you haven't said anything for 2 years. The accusation hung in the air. Daniel flinched, but he didn't run. I know, I'm sorry, but I'm saying it now. Happy birthday, Josephine Marie Frost. 7 years old, smart as a whip, brave as a bear, and loved more than you know. Joe's eyes filled. You haven't called me Josephine since Mama died. I know, I'm trying to do better. After breakfast, Daniel pulled out the letter. Joe's confusion turned to shock. What is that? It's from your mother. She wrote it before she died. One for every birthday until you're grown. Daniel's hands shook. This one's for today. Joe took the letter like it was made of glass. Mama wrote this for me. For this exact day. She wanted you to know she'd still be here even when she couldn't be. Joe opened it with trembling fingers. Read silently. Tears streamed down her face, but she didn't make a sound. Clara watched Daniel watch his daughter and saw his composure crack. He was crying too silently, like crying might disturb whatever sacred moment this was. Finally, Joe looked up. She said she loves me. Said she'll always love me. Said Daddy would take care of me and make sure I never forgot her. That's right. She said you'd be sad for a while, but that one day you'd be happy again, and that it was okay, that she wanted you to be happy. Joe's voice broke. She said she'd be waiting for both of us, but not for a long, long time, that we had to live first, really live, for her. Daniel pulled Joe into his arms, and they held each other while grief and love and loss all crashed together. Clara started to leave to give them privacy, but Joe reached out. Stay, please. You're part of this too now. So Clara stayed. And the three of them sat together while the morning light painted the kitchen gold, and Anna's words reminded them that love didn't end with death, it just changed shape. Later, much later, after Joe had gone outside to play in the snow, Daniel found Clara in the kitchen. Thank you. For what? For making me give her that letter. For being here. For not letting me hide anymore. He paused. I'm not fixed. I'm still broken. But maybe I'm ready to start healing. That's all anyone can ask. I need to tell you something. About why I've been sleeping in the barn. Clara waited. It's not just grief, it's guilt. I blame myself for Anna dying. She got sick delivering Joe, almost died then, and the doctor said no more children. But she wanted more, kept saying she felt incomplete, and His voice cracked. I wanted her happy more than I wanted her safe, so I didn't fight hard enough when she talked about trying again. Didn't protect her from her own desires, and she got sick. Fever that wouldn't break, and it killed her. Daniel, that wasn't your fault. Wasn't it? If I'd been stronger. If I'd said no. If you'd said no, she would have resented you. Would have felt like you were treating her like a child instead of a partner. You loved her enough to respect her choices even when those choices were dangerous. That's not guilt. That's love. It got her killed. No, sickness got her killed. Bad luck. Tragedy. Not you. Daniel looked at her with raw, desperate eyes. How do you forgive yourself when you couldn't save the person you loved most? You don't. You just learn to live with the weight. And you let people help you carry it. He reached out, hesitated, then took her bandaged hand. Can I ask you something? Yes. Why haven't you left? You've been here almost a week. The storm's passed. You could go back to town, get on a train, find somewhere that isn't this broken ranch with this broken family. Clara looked at their joined hands, at the scars she'd earned helping him, at the kitchen she'd cleaned, at the life she was building from nothing. Because I'm broken too. And maybe broken things fit together better than whole things ever could. Daniel squeezed her hand gently. I'm glad you're here, Clara Price. I'm glad I'm here too, Daniel Frost. Outside, Joe shrieked with laughter, and they both turned to look. She was building a snow fort, her cheeks red with cold and joy. She's happy, Daniel said, wonder in his voice. I haven't seen her this happy since her mother died. Yeah, she's allowed to be happy. You both are. Anna would want that. How do you know? Because that's what love is. Wanting the people you leave behind to keep living, to find joy again, to be okay without you, even when it hurts that they're okay without you. Daniel was quiet. Then, you're very wise for someone who spent 5 days on a frozen bench. Or very broken. Hard to tell the difference sometimes. They stood there together watching Joe play, and for the first time since Anna died, Daniel Frost felt something other than grief. It wasn't happiness. Not yet. But it was possibility. And possibility was enough. That night, Daniel came into the house for dinner without being asked. He talked to Joe about her day. He laughed, actually laughed at something she said. And when it was time for bed, he read her a story from one of Anna's old books. Clara watched from the kitchen cleaning dishes and trying not to cry at the simple domesticity of it all. After Joe was asleep, Daniel found her still in the kitchen. You don't have to clean. I know, but it gives me something to do besides think. Think about what? About how I've been here a week and haven't thought once about leaving. About how your daughter calls me by my first name and trusts me with her tears. About how I feel more at home in this broken house than I ever did in Philadelphia. Daniel moved closer. Would it be so terrible staying? No. But it would be complicated. People will talk. Let them talk. Daniel, I'm a woman with no reputation living in a house with a widower and his child. That's scandal, not respectability. Then we make it respectable. Clara's hands stilled in the wash water. What are you saying? I'm saying Joe needs a mother. I need help. You need a home. And maybe there's something here worth building. That's the grief talking. No, it's the clarity. I've been drowning for 2 years, Clara. You threw me a rope. I'm asking if you'll help me climb out. Clara turned to face him, water dripping from her hands. I'm not Anna. I know. I can't replace her. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking if you'll help me remember how to live. How to be Joe's father. How to build something new from what's left. That's not a proposal. That's a business arrangement. Maybe. But it's honest. And maybe honest is better than pretty lies. Clara studied his face, saw the exhaustion, the hope, the desperate need for someone to say yes when every part of him expected no. Ask me in a month. If you still want this, if Joe still wants this, ask me when grief isn't so loud you can't hear anything else. And if I do, then we'll talk about what respectable looks like in Wyoming territory. Daniel smiled. Actually smiled. Deal. Outside the wind howled, but inside something warm was taking root. Something fragile and new and desperately hopeful. Clara went to bed that night thinking about the letter from Thomas Hartley still tucked in her bag. The lies that had brought her here. The truth she was building from ruins. She'd come west looking for a husband, a home, a future built on promises. Instead, she'd found a broken widower, a grieving child, and a ranch buried in snow. And somehow, impossibly, she'd found exactly what she needed. The month that followed moved like water finding new channels after a dam breaks. Slow at first, uncertain, then gaining momentum, as everyone learned to navigate this strange new arrangement. Clara woke before dawn, each morning habit from years of teaching school, making sleep past sunrise impossible. She'd find Daniel already up feeding the fire, making coffee that could strip paint, but somehow tasted like comfort. They'd work in parallel silence, her preparing breakfast, him checking stock and weather, until Joe stumbled down, still half asleep, but determined not to miss a moment with both of them present. You're both still here, Joe said every morning, like she expected to wake and find it had all been a dream. Still here, Clara would answer. Still here, Daniel would echo, and Joe's relief never quite faded, no matter how many times they reassured her. 2 weeks in the first real test came on horseback. Literally. Clara was in the kitchen when Joe burst through the door, face white with panic. It's Duchess. She's foaling and something's wrong and Daddy needs help, but there's no one else and... Clara was moving before Joe finished. She'd never birthed a foal. Never even seen it done. But Daniel's voice carried from the barn tight with fear, and that was enough. The mare was down, thrashing eyes rolling white. Daniel knelt beside her, hands bloody, face drawn. Can't get the foal turned. It's breech and I can't. My hands are too big. Can't reach. Tell me what to do. Daniel looked up, saw Clara, and something like relief crossed his face. Your hands are smaller. If you can reach in, feel for the hooves, try to turn. Show me. He guided her hands, his voice steady, despite the trembling in his fingers. The mare screamed. Clara felt the foal inside, positioned wrong, dying along with its mother if they didn't act fast. There. Feel that. That's the hind leg. Need to push it back. Bring the front legs forward. Clara did as instructed, fighting nausea and fear, and the mare's contractions trying to force her hands out. Her fingers found purchase, pushed, pulled, felt something shift. Got it. I think I got it. Pull. Gentle but firm. Don't stop. She pulled. The mare screamed again. And then suddenly there was a foal, wet and struggling and alive, hitting the straw in a tangle of impossibly long legs. Clara sat back, covered in blood and birthing fluids, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. Daniel was grinning. Actually grinning. You did it. Clara, you saved them both. I just followed your instructions. You didn't panic. Most people panic. He reached over, squeezed her shoulder. Thank you. Joe appeared in the barn doorway, saw the foal, and burst into tears of relief. She ran to Clara, not caring about the blood, and hugged her fiercely. You saved Duchess. You saved the baby. Your father saved them. I just have smaller hands. But later, after they'd cleaned up and the mare was nursing her foal, Daniel found Clara alone in the kitchen. I meant what I said. Thank you. Anna used to help with the difficult births. Since she died, I've lost 2 foals because I couldn't manage alone. You didn't have to help. Yes, I did. That's what partners do. The word hung between them. Partners, not employee, not guest. Partners. The month's not up yet, Daniel said quietly. I know. But I need to tell you something before it is. Before you make any decisions. Clara's stomach tightened. All right. The ranch is in debt. Not foreclosure yet, but close. Anna's Dr. Bill's funeral costs 2 years of me barely holding things together. He stopped, jaw clenched. If we don't have a good spring calving, if we lose too many head to the winter, we might lose everything. Why are you telling me this? Because if you stay, you're tying yourself to a sinking ship. And that's not fair unless you know exactly what you're getting into. Clara absorbed this. The crumbling ranch, the mounting debts, the very real possibility of losing everything they were trying to build. How much time do we have? Tax assessor comes in May, 4 months. If we can't pay, they auction the land. How much do you owe? $300. Clara's breath caught. $300. A fortune. Impossible. That's why the month deadline matters, Daniel continued. I need to know if you're in this, really in this. Because if you're not, I need to start making other plans. Maybe sell some land. Maybe send Joe to live with Anna's sister in Denver while I figure things out. You'd send Joe away, if it meant keeping her fed and safe. Yes. His voice cracked. I can't let pride kill my daughter Clara. She understood then. This wasn't just about her staying or leaving. This was about whether they fought together or Daniel faced ruin alone. I have money. Daniel's head snapped up. What? Not much. $73. I've been saving it since I arrived from the small jobs Mrs. Burke gives me from selling preserves to the neighbors. It's not 300, but it's something. Clara, I can't take your money. You're not taking it. I'm investing it. In this ranch. In Joe's future. In... She stopped. Started again. In us. Whatever us means. Daniel stared at her. You'd risk everything on a failing ranch and a broken man. I'd risk everything on a good man trying to heal, and a little girl who deserves better than watching her father give up. As for the ranch, Clara straightened her shoulders. We have 4 months. We'd better figure out how to make $300. That night they sat at the kitchen table with papers spread between them. Joe was asleep upstairs, oblivious to the danger her home was in. We could sell cattle early, Daniel said. But winter prices are terrible. We'd lose money. What about horses? You have good breeding stock. Need them for spring work. Can't sell what we need to survive. Clara studied the numbers, her teaching mind calculating possibilities. What if we didn't just sell cattle? What if we sold value-added products? Speak plain. Beef, but processed. Smoked, jerked, preserved. Ranch wives do it for their families. What if we did it for sale towns like Copper Ridge? They have miners, railroad workers, people who need portable food. We could charge 3 times what we'd get for live cattle. Daniel frowned, thinking, that's a lot of work. We have 4 months and 3 people. We can work. You'd do that, spend your days in a smokehouse processing meat. I'd do worse to keep Jo from losing her home. Something shifted in Daniel's expression. Not quite hope, but not despair either. All right, we try it your way. But Clara, if this doesn't work, if we lose everything anyway, then we lose it fighting, together. The work began the next day. Daniel slaughtered 4 steers, more than he'd planned, betting everything on Clara's idea working. Clara and Jo transformed the smokehouse into a production facility, working from dawn to dusk, cutting, seasoning, smoking meat, until their hands cramped and their eyes burned from smoke. Word spread through the valley about what the Frost Ranch was doing. Some neighbors thought Daniel had lost his mind. Others were intrigued. The first test came when Clara loaded the wagon with samples and drove to Copper Ridge herself, Daniel staying behind to work the ranch. You don't have to do this, he'd said that morning. I can go. You're needed here. I'm not afraid of town. They'll talk about you living here, about us. Let them talk. We're not doing anything wrong. But walking into Harrison's general store, Clara felt every eye turned toward her. The abandoned bride. The woman living in sin with Daniel Frost. The scandal made flesh. Mr. Harrison looked uncomfortable. Miss Price, what can I do for you? I'm selling smoked beef, premium quality, perfect for miners, travelers, anyone who needs food that won't spoil. She set samples on the counter. Try it. Harrison did. His eyebrows rose. This is good? It's excellent. And I can provide steady supply all winter. Interested. How much? Clara named her price. Harrison whistled. That's steep. That's fair. You won't find better quality anywhere. A miner who'd been listening spoke up. I'll take 5 pounds, if it's as good as he says. It's better. By the time Clara left, she'd sold 40 pounds of jerky and had orders for 60 more. She'd also endured whispers, sidelong glances, and one woman, Mrs. Carmichael from the church social committee, who'd cornered her by the door. Miss Price, the town is concerned about your living situation. The town's concern is noted and dismissed. You're living with an unmarried man. That's improper. I'm helping a widower and his child survive winter. If the town has a problem with Christian charity, perhaps they should examine their own consciences. Mrs. Carmichael's face reddened. There are proper ways. The proper way would have been for one of you to help Daniel and Jo before they were desperate enough to accept help from a stranger. Since none of you did, I'll continue doing it my way. She left Mrs. Carmichael sputtering. Daniel was in the barn when she returned, and the relief on his face when he saw her was almost comical. You're back. Did you think I'd run off with the wagon? No. Yes. Maybe. He helped her down, hands lingering a moment longer than necessary. How did it go? We sold out. And I have orders for more. His face transformed. Clara. Don't celebrate yet. We've got 3 months of work ahead, and no guarantee it'll be enough. But it's a start. That night after Jo was asleep, Clara found Daniel on the porch, staring at the stars. Can't sleep. Thinking, he said. About what you did today. Going into town, facing down gossip, fighting for us. For Jo. I did it for Jo. Liar. He said it gently. You did it for all of us. And I need you to know I see that. I see you. Clara's chest tightened. Daniel. The month's up tomorrow, and I need to know. Are you staying? I gave you my money. Where would I go? That's not an answer. She was quiet for a long moment, watching her breath fog in the cold air. When I got off the train in Copper Ridge, I thought my life was over, thought I'd used up all my chances and failed at all of them. Then Jo found me, and you let me help. And for the first time since my mother died, I felt like I mattered. Like my existence had purpose beyond just surviving until I died. You matter, Clara. To Joe. To me. To this place that's coming back to life because you wouldn't let us quit. I'm staying, she said finally. Not as an employee, not as a guest, as a partner. In the ranch and raising Joe in whatever we're building here. If you'll have me. Daniel turned to face her fully. There's something I need to say about Anna. Clara's stomach dropped. You don't have to. I do, because it matters. He took a breath. I loved Anna. Still love her memory. But she's gone, and I'm here and so are you. And what I'm feeling for you, it's not what I felt for Anna. It's different. Quieter. Less like fire, more like steady coals that keep you warm through winter. Daniel. I'm not asking you to be her. I'm asking if you'd consider being you. Here. With us. Permanently. Clara's heart hammered. What exactly are you asking? I'm asking if you'd marry me. Not for love, not yet anyway, but for partnership. For Joe's security. For making this arrangement respectable so the town can't use it against us. He paused. And maybe for the chance that partnership could become something more. Given time. That's the least romantic proposal I've ever heard. It's honest. It is that. Clara studied his face. Saw the fear beneath the careful control. Can I ask you something? Anything. If Anna were here, if she'd never died, would you be asking me this? Daniel didn't flinch from the question. No, but she's not here, and I have to live in the world that exists, not the one I wish existed. In this world you're here. You're fighting for my daughter. You're saving my ranch. And I'd be a fool not to recognize that as the gift it is. I need time to think. Take all the time you need. But Clara, whatever you decide, thank you. For giving us hope when we'd forgotten what that felt like. He went inside, leaving Clara alone with the stars and the impossible weight of the decision before her. Marriage to Daniel meant security, a home, a family. But it also meant tying herself permanently to a man still grieving his dead wife, to a ranch drowning in debt, to a future with no guarantees. She thought about Thomas Hartley's letters, the pretty lies that had promised everything and delivered nothing. Daniel was offering the opposite ugly truth that promised very little but delivered it honestly, which was more than most women ever got. The next morning, Clara found Daniel in the barn before sunrise. He looked like he hadn't slept. I have conditions, she said without preamble. His head snapped up. Conditions. If we do this, we do it as real partners. Equal say in ranch decisions. My name on the deed. Joe to be raised as our daughter, not as your daughter, that I'm helping with. Done. I'm not finished. We don't pretend this is a love match. Not to each other. Joe can think what she likes, but between us we're honest. Always honest even when it hurts. Agreed. And if you ever compare me to Anna, if you ever make me feel like I'm a poor substitute for the woman you really wanted, I'm gone. I won't be second choice in my own marriage. Daniel stepped closer. Clara, you're not second choice. You're different choice. And different doesn't mean lesser. Promise me anyway. I promise. Anything else? One more thing. If this doesn't work, if we try and fail, we don't stay married out of obligation. We end it cleanly, and you don't punish Joe for it. That won't happen. Promise anyway. I promise. Daniel held out his hand. Partners. Clara took it. His palm was calloused, warm, steady. Partners. They told Joe that night after supper. The child looked between them with cautious hope. What does that mean, partners? It means Clara's staying, Daniel said. Permanently. We're getting married. Joe's face did something complicated. Joy, confusion, fear, all tangled together. Like Mama. No bug. Not like Mama. Different. Clara's going to be your mother in her own way. That doesn't replace the mother you lost. Just means you get two mothers who love you. One in heaven, one here. Do you love her? Joe asked Daniel. Like you loved Mama. Daniel didn't lie. Not yet. But I respect her, trust her, care what happens to her. That's a good foundation. Love can come later. Joe turned to Clara. Do you love Daddy? I care about him. About you. About this family we're building. That's enough for now. But what if it's never more than enough? What if you stay and you're not happy? Clara knelt down to Joe's level. Then I'll deal with that when it comes. But right now, I choose this. I choose you. I choose this family. That's what matters. Joe threw her arms around Clara's neck, and Clara felt the child's tears soak through her collar. Thank you for staying. Thank you for not leaving me. I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart. I promise. They married a week later in the small church in Copper Ridge, with Jedediah Burke as witness, and half the town watching in scandalized fascination. Clara wore her traveling dress cleaned and mended. Daniel wore his best shirt, the one Anna had made him years ago. Joe stood between them holding both their hands. Reverend Matthews kept the ceremony brief, clearly uncomfortable with the practical nature of this union. Do you, Daniel Frost, take Clara Price as your lawfully wedded wife? I do. Do you, Clara Price, take Daniel Frost as your lawfully wedded husband? Clara looked at this man she barely knew, this child she'd come to love, this life she was choosing over safe retreat. I do. Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. No kiss. That felt too intimate for what they were. Just a handshake that became a brief, awkward hug, while Joe cheered and the town whispered. Mrs. Carmichael cornered Clara on the church steps. Well, you've made it respectable. Barely. That was the goal. Respectability. I'll take barely. The woman huffed away, and Daniel appeared at Clara's elbow. Ready to go home, Mrs. Frost? The name hit her strange. Mrs. Frost. She was someone's wife. Someone's mother. Someone who mattered. Ready? The ride home was quiet. Joe chattered about the ceremony, about how pretty Clara looked, about how she had a mother again, even if it was different. Daniel drove in silence, face unreadable. At the house, Joe ran inside to change out of her good dress. Daniel helped Clara down from the wagon, and for a moment they stood there, newly married strangers, trying to figure out what came next. I'll sleep in the guest room, Clara said. We should probably maintain separate bedrooms, for now. Agreed. But Clara? Yes. Thank you, for taking this risk, for choosing us when you could have chosen anything else. Where else would I go? What else would I do? I don't know. But I'm grateful you didn't figure that out before saying, I do. Clara almost smiled. Me too. That night, lying in her room, formerly the guest room, now officially hers, Clara stared at the ceiling and tried to process what she'd done. She'd married a man she didn't love, tied herself to a failing ranch, become stepmother to a traumatized 7-year-old. All on the desperate hope that this gamble would somehow work out. It was insane. It was also the first decision she'd made in years that felt completely terrifyingly right. Down the hall, Daniel lay in his own room. Anna's wedding ring still on the chain around his neck. Clara's ring now on his finger. He'd married another woman. Brought someone new into Anna's house. Let someone else sleep in the room where Anna died. Anna would understand. He had to believe that. She'd have wanted Joe cared for, the ranch saved, him to keep living. But understanding and forgiving were different things, and Daniel wasn't sure he'd ever forgive himself for moving on. Joe, in her room between theirs, pressed her ear to the wall and listened to the silence. Two adults, separately alone, both probably wondering if they'd made a terrible mistake. But they'd stayed, both of them. That's what mattered. Joe closed her eyes and whispered a prayer to her mother. Thank you for sending Clara. I know she's not you, but she's here, and Daddy's here, and we're going to be okay. I think we're going to be okay. The house settled around them. 3 broken people trying to become a family. It wasn't perfect, It wasn't even close to what any of them had imagined. But it was real, and honest, and built on something sturdier than pretty promises. It was enough. The winter deepened. Work consumed them, processing meat, managing cattle, keeping the ranch running through blizzard after blizzard. They fell into rhythms without naming them. Daniel working outside Clara, managing the business side, Joe helping both while stealing moments to just be 7 years old. 1 month bled into 2. The debt loomed. But the jerky business thrived, and slowly, impossibly, they started to believe they might actually survive this. Then the tax assessor came early. Marcus Webb arrived on a gray February morning, all official papers and cold eyes. He stood in their kitchen refusing coffee and laid out the facts with brutal efficiency. Tax laws changed. Territory needs revenue. Payments due end of March, now not May. You have 6 weeks. Daniel's face went white. That's not what we were told. Law changed. Deal with it. Webb's eyes slid to Clara, assessing. Heard you got married. Convenient. Woman brings money to a failing ranch. My wife's finances are none of your concern. They are when they affect what you owe. New assessment based on household income. Webb pulled out a revised bill. You now owe $400, due March 31st. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. That's impossible, Clara said. We were told 300. We've been working toward 300. Should have worked faster. 400, 6 weeks, or I auction this place to the highest bidder. Webb tipped his hat. Good day, Mr. and Mrs. Frost. Hope you've got a backup plan. He left. Daniel sat down, hard face in his hands. Clara stood frozen, doing math that didn't work no matter how she calculated it. They had $143 saved. The jerky business was bringing in maybe $30 a week if they were lucky. 6 weeks meant they could earn maybe $180 more. $323 total. Still $77 short. And no idea where to find it. Joe appeared in the doorway, having heard everything. What do we do? Daniel looked at his daughter, at his wife, at the home they'd been fighting to save. And for the first time since Clara arrived, she saw him break completely. I don't know, Joe Bug. I don't know. Clara watched Daniel's shoulders shake and felt something fierce rise in her chest. Not panic, not despair, anger. Get up. Daniel looked at her through his fingers, eyes red. What? I said get up. We're not doing this. Clara, you heard him. $400 in 6 weeks. It's impossible. Nothing's impossible until we stop trying. Clara pulled out the ledger, spreading it across the table with force. We have $143 saved. We can make another $180 if we push production. That's $323. Still $77 short. Then we find $77. We sell something. We borrow it. We figure it out. From who every neighbor's as broke as we are. The bank won't lend to a failing ranch. Daniel's voice went hollow. It's over, Clara. Maybe it's time to accept that. No. The word came from Joe. She stood in the doorway, small hands clenched into fists, tears streaming down her face, but her voice steady. No. I didn't bring Clara here so you could give up. I didn't watch Mama die so you could let her dream die too. We're fighting, all of us, together. Daniel stared at his daughter, like seeing her for the first time. Joe. Mama would be ashamed of you right now. She'd say you're being a coward, and she'd be right. Joe's voice cracked, but didn't break. So get up, Daddy. Get up and fight. Or get out of the way and let me and Clara do it without you. The silence that followed could have cut glass. Then Daniel stood, slowly. His hands were shaking, but his jaw was set. You're right. Both of you. I'm sorry. He looked at Clara. What do we do? Clara felt relief flood through her. We work. Harder than we've ever worked. We push production to the limit. And we find what we can sell that we haven't sold yet. Like what? Clara thought, fast inventory running through her mind. The breeding horses, not all of them. But we could sell 2 mares without crippling spring work. That's $40 each if we're lucky. That's still not enough. Then we sell more cattle. I know winter prices are terrible, but something's better than nothing. The cattle are thin, won't bring good money. Bad money's better than no money. Clara grabbed paper, started making lists. What else do we have? Equipment we're not using, surplus goods. Daniel rubbed his face. There's Anna's things, in the trunk upstairs. Some of it's valuable. Her mother's jewelry, silver candlesticks. A music box that's worth... He stopped, unable to continue. Joe's voice was quiet. Mama would want us to use them. She'd say keeping pretty things wasn't worth losing our home. Joe, those are your inheritance, the only things left from her. The ranch is my inheritance, the one you and Mama built together. That matters more than jewelry I'm too young to wear. Joe straightened her spine. Sell it. Sell all of it. Whatever it takes. Clara saw the pain flash across Daniel's face. Selling Anna's things felt like losing her all over again. But he nodded. All right, I'll take inventory. See what might bring money. He looked at Clara. We're really doing this fighting when we're probably going to lose anyway. We're fighting because we might win, and because Joe deserves parents who don't quit when things get hard. Something shifted in Daniel's expression. Parents. Plural. That's what we are now, whether we meant to be or not. The next week passed in a blur of brutal work. Clara and Joe increased jerky production, working 16-hour days in the smokehouse until their eyes burned and their hands cramped. Daniel took 2 mares and 5 steers to market, coming back with $112 and a haunted look. Prices were worse than I thought. Had to take what I could get. Clara added the money to their savings. $355. Still 45 short, with 3 weeks remaining. That night, Daniel brought down Anna's trunk. He opened it like it might explode, pulling out items wrapped in cloth and memory. A string of pearls. Her mother's. From Boston. Silver candlesticks. Silver. Wedding present from my parents. A music box that played something soft and sad. I gave her this our first Christmas. She cried when she heard it. Each item was a piece of Anna, and Daniel looked like he was bleeding out as he set them aside. Daniel. Clara touched his arm gently. We don't have to sell everything. Maybe just... No, Joe's right. Anna would want this. She always said the ranch was our real legacy. The things are just things. But his hands shook as he wrapped the music box back up. The next day, Clara took the items to town. Mr. Harrison offered $30 for everything. That's robbery. The pearls alone are worth $50. Not to folks around here, nobody's buying luxury goods in February. Harrison's face wasn't unkind. I'm sorry, Mrs. Frost. That's the best I can do. Clara took the $30, added it to their total, and felt desperation claw at her throat. $385. Still 15 short with 2 weeks left. She was loading the empty wagon when a voice stopped her cold. Clara Price, or should I say, Mrs. Frost now. She turned to find Thomas Hartley leaning against a post, looking exactly as his letters had described him. Handsome, confident, utterly false. What do you want? Heard you married that widower, settled into ranch life. How domestic. Hartley's smile was all teeth. Must be quite different from the life I promised you. The life you promised didn't exist. This one does. Does it? Word is the Frost place is about to be auctioned. Shame. You traded one disaster for another. Clara felt rage burn through her fear. Say what you came to say and leave me alone. I'm saying I have a proposition. I'm buying land in this territory. Building an empire. The Frost Ranch would fit nicely into my plans. Hartley pulled out a document. I'll pay off your debts. All of them. In exchange, you convince your husband to sell to me at a fair price. And what's fair to you, half what it's worth. Call it a distressed sale. That's not fair. That's theft. That's business. And it's better than losing everything in auction and getting nothing. Hartley stepped closer. Think about it, Clara. You could walk away with something. Start over somewhere else. Isn't that better than watching your new family fall apart? Get away from my wife. Daniel's voice cut through the cold air like a blade. He stood at the end of the street, still as stone eyes locked on Hartley. Hartley didn't flinch. Mr. Frost, I was just making your wife a business proposition. I heard. Answer's no. You haven't heard the details. Don't need to. You're the man who lured my wife to Wyoming with lies. You think I'd do business with you? Your wife. Hartley's smile sharpened. She was supposed to be my wife, until you stole her. She chose me, after you abandoned her. Big difference. Clara stepped between them, sensing violence about to break loose. Thomas, leave. We're not interested. You will be, when the auction comes and you're homeless. Hartley tipped his hat. Offer stands until March 31st. After that, I buy the ranch for pennies from the territory and you get nothing. He walked away, leaving Clara and Daniel standing in the street. Who was that? Daniel's voice was tight. The man whose letters brought me here. The man who didn't exist. He exists now. He's a vulture. Ignore him. But Daniel was staring after Hartley with an expression Clara couldn't read. What if he's right? What if we're fighting for nothing and should take whatever we can get? Daniel Frost, don't you dare. We're not selling our home to that lying snake. Our home. You said our home. Clara realized what she'd said and meant it. Yes, our home. Mine, yours, Joe's. And we're keeping it. They drove back in silence, but Daniel's hand found hers on the seat between them and held on. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She lay staring at the ceiling, doing math that refused to work. $15. They needed $15 more and had 11 days to find it. She heard footsteps in the hall. Daniel probably. He didn't sleep much either, haunted by debt and dead wives and decisions that felt impossible. But the footsteps stopped at her door. A soft knock. Clara, you awake? She opened the door to find him fully dressed, hat in hand. What's wrong? Nothing. Everything. I don't know. Daniel looked exhausted. Can we talk? Of course. They went downstairs, careful not to wake Joe. Clara made coffee, while Daniel paced, clearly working up to something. I've been thinking about Hartley's offer. Clara's stomach dropped. Daniel. Not to take it, but about what he said, about starting over somewhere else. Daniel stopped pacing, faced her directly. What if we're fighting for the wrong thing? What if keeping this specific piece of land matters less than keeping our family together? This land is your family. You built it with Anna. Joe was born here. You can't just walk away. Can't I? If it means Joe stays safe and fed, if it means you don't lose everything because you tied yourself to my sinking ship. Clara stood, moved to him. Listen to me. This ranch isn't about land. It's about legacy. About proving that Anna's dream doesn't die with her. About showing Joe that we fight for what matters even when it's hard. If we sell to Hartley, we're teaching her that bullies win. That giving up is easier than fighting. Is that what you want? I want her safe. She won't be safe if she grows up believing that running away solves problems. She'll be scarred, Daniel. Maybe not physically, but here. Clara pressed her hand to his chest, feeling his heart hammer beneath. She'll carry it forever. Daniel caught her hand, held it there. When did you get so wise? When I decided this family was worth saving. They stood like that, hands pressed together, something shifting between them that neither could name. Not love, not yet. But recognition, partnership deepening into something that might become more given time. We're going to lose, Daniel said quietly. $15 might as well be 15,000. We're out of things to sell and out of time. Then we find another way. We always find another way. But lying in bed later, Clara wasn't so certain. $15, 11 days, no solutions in sight. She finally fell asleep praying to a God she wasn't sure listened to women like her. Women who'd been lied to and abandoned and made desperate choices. But she prayed anyway, because it was all she had left. The answer came from an unexpected source. 3 days before the deadline, Jedediah Burke rode up to the ranch with an expression Clara couldn't read. "Mr. Burke, what brings you out here?" "Business. Is Daniel around?" They gathered in the kitchen, coffee cooling, as Burke pulled out papers. "Heard about your situation. The whole valley has. Gossip travels fast. If you're here to offer sympathy, we appreciate it, but we need money more," Daniel said flatly. "I'm here to offer a loan. $50. No interest. Pay me back when you can." The silence was deafening. "Why?" Clara finally asked. "Why would you do that?" Burke looked uncomfortable. "Because your wife," he nodded at Daniel, "sat on my platform for 5 days and never once asked for charity beyond $1 silver. Because when I offered her escape, she chose to help a desperate child instead. Because this valley needs people who fight, and you three are fighters. Mr. Burke, we can't accept—" "Yes, you can. Pride's expensive, Daniel. Too expensive for what you're facing." Burke pushed the money across the table. "Take it. Save your ranch. Teach your daughter that asking for help isn't weakness." Daniel stared at the bills like they might bite him. Clara saw his throat work, swallowing pride and gratitude in equal measure. "Thank you," he finally managed. "Don't thank me. Just pay it forward someday when you're on the other side of disaster." After Burke left, they counted their total. $435. Enough for the tax payment, with $35 left over. Joe whooped and danced around the kitchen. Daniel sat down hard, face in his hands, shoulders shaking with relief, or tears, or both. Clara felt her own eyes burn. They'd done it. Somehow, impossibly, they'd found a way. "We should celebrate," Joe said. "Make something special for dinner." "We should save money," Daniel countered, but he was smiling. "One night. Let's celebrate one night before we go back to worrying about everything else." So they did. Clara made Anna's favorite stew recipe from the stained card Joe produced. Daniel opened a bottle of wine he'd been saving for an occasion that never came. Joe set the table with Anna's good china, declaring that if they'd sold her jewelry, they could at least use her dishes. They ate together, the three of them, and for the first time it felt like family instead of survivors, clinging to wreckage. "Tell me about when you met Mama," Joe said to Daniel. "The real story. Not the one you always tell." Daniel's smile was soft. "Real story is I saw her across a church social and forgot how to breathe. She was wearing yellow, laughing at something her sister said. And I thought, that's it. That's the woman I'm going to marry." Was she beautiful? She was everything. Beautiful, and smart, and funny, and so alive it hurt to look at her sometimes. Joe turned to Clara. "Are you beautiful?" Clara laughed. "I'm adequate." "Daddy, is Clara beautiful?" Daniel looked at Clara, really looked at her, and something in his expression made her breath catch. "Yes, different from your mother, but yes, beautiful." Clara's cheeks heated. "Daniel." "It's true. You're strong and brave and stubborn as hell. Sorry, Joe, and you see problems as challenges instead of endings. That's beautiful." Joe grinned. "Daddy thinks you're pretty." "Joe, don't." "He does. His ears turn red when he looks at you." "My ears don't." Daniel touched his ears. They were in fact red. Clara laughed, and the sound surprised her. When was the last time she'd laughed? Really laughed. Daniel was laughing too, and Joe joined in. And for a moment, they were just a family, sharing a meal and a moment of joy. Later, after Joe was in bed, Daniel found Clara cleaning dishes. "You don't have to do that." "Habit." "Clara." She turned. He was standing closer than she'd expected, close enough that she could see the flecks of blue in his gray eyes. "My ears really turn red." "Apparently." "Huh." He didn't move away. "About what I said. At dinner, I meant it." "Daniel, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I want to." He reached up, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The touch was gentle, questioning. "This thing between us, it's not what I had with Anna, but it's not nothing either." Clara's heart hammered. "What is it?" "I don't know yet, but I'd like to find out, if you would." "I thought we agreed this was a business arrangement." "We did, but businesses can grow, change, become something neither partner planned for." His hand lingered near her face. "I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give, just saying I see you, Clara Frost, and I like what I see." Clara felt something crack open in her chest, something that had been frozen since Thomas Hartley's lies shattered her last bit of hope. "I see you, too," she whispered. Daniel smiled, really smiled. Then he stepped back, giving her space she wasn't sure she wanted anymore. "Good night, Clara." "Good night." She watched him go upstairs, touching the spot where his hand had been, wondering what she'd gotten herself into, and finding she didn't regret it at all. The next morning they rode to town together to pay the tax assessment. Webb looked disappointed when Daniel counted out $400 in exact change. "Well, didn't think you'd manage it." "We're full of surprises." "This doesn't solve everything. You'll still owe taxes next year, and the year after. Ranch is barely profitable." "The ranch is surviving. That's enough for now." Daniel took the receipt, folded it carefully. "We'll see you next year, Mr. Webb. Try not to look so disappointed." They walked out together, Daniel's hand on the small of Clara's back, and she felt people staring. The gossip would start immediately. The abandoned bride and the widower, their marriage of convenience, maybe becoming something more. Let them talk. "What now?" Clara asked as they climbed into the wagon. "Now we survive spring calving, then summer drought, then next winter, then the tax bill again." Daniel looked at her. "Think you can handle that? I handled you, didn't I?" "Fair point." They rode home in comfortable silence, and Clara thought about the woman who'd sat frozen on a platform 6 weeks ago. That woman had been ready to die, ready to give up, ready to accept that her life had peaked at 28 and everything after would be slow decline. This woman sitting next to Daniel Frost, driving toward a ranch she'd helped save, wearing a wedding ring she'd earned, this woman was alive. Really alive, for the first time in years. "Clara, yes. Thank you. For not leaving. For fighting. For choosing us." "Where else would I go? You're stuck with me now." "Good." At the ranch, Joe was waiting on the porch, anxious. When she saw their faces, she screamed with joy and ran to meet them. "We did it. We really did it. We did it," Daniel confirmed, swinging her up in his arms. "Ranch is safe. For now. Forever. It's safe forever because we're a family, and families don't give up." Daniel's eyes met Clara's over Joe's head. Something passed between them. Agreement. Commitment. The beginning of something neither had planned, but both needed. That night, Clara found the letter from Thomas Hartley still tucked in her bag. The original one. The lies that had brought her here. She should burn it. Destroy the evidence of her naivety. Instead, she opened it one last time. Read the empty promises, the false hopes, the pretty words that meant nothing. Then she wrote across it in firm script, "This led me to the wrong place and the right life. Thank you for being exactly who you were." She tucked it back in her bag, a reminder that sometimes the worst detours lead to the best destinations. In his room, Daniel took off the chain that held Anna's wedding ring. He'd worn it for 2 years, unable to let go. But tonight, looking at the receipt that proved they'd saved her dream, Looking at the ring Clara wore, that meant a new dream was being built tonight, felt like the right time. He kissed Anna's ring gently. "I'll always love you. But I'm living now. Really living. Hope you're okay with that." The wind outside could have been answer or just weather. Either way, Daniel felt lighter than he had in 2 years. Jo lay in bed between two closed doors, listening to the silence of her parents, not quite together, but not entirely apart. It was strange, different from when Mama was alive. But it was good strange, safe strange. She pulled out her mother's letter, the one for her 7th birthday, and read it again. "Remember, my darling Jo, that love comes in many shapes. Some loves are loud and bright like fireworks. Others are quiet and steady like stars. Both light the darkness. Both matter. Be grateful for whatever light finds you." Jo tucked the letter under her pillow and whispered to the darkness. "I think we found our light, Mama. It's different from yours and Daddy's, but I think you'd like her. Clara's not you, but she's ours, and that's enough." Outside, snow began to fall again. March's last grasp before spring broke through. The ranch settled into night, 3 people under one roof, separate, but together, broken, but healing. And in the morning they'd wake and work and fight for one more day of survival. But tonight they'd rest knowing they'd earned the ground beneath them. Spring arrived like a promise kept slow, tentative, then suddenly everywhere. Snow retreated to the highest peaks. Grass pushed through frozen ground, and the ranch that had nearly died in winter came back to life with stubborn persistence. Clara woke one morning to find wildflowers on the kitchen table. Small purple things that grew along the creek, arranged in a chipped cup that had been Anna's. Jo stood by the stove trying to look innocent. They just appeared. Flowers don't just appear. These ones did. Must be magic. Daniel came in from the barn, saw the flowers, and his ears turned red. Jo caught Clara's eye and grinned. "Morning," Daniel said, not quite meeting Clara's gaze. "Morning. Nice flowers." "Wouldn't know. Didn't pick them." "Right. They're magic flowers, Jo told me." Daniel shot his daughter a look. Jo examined her fingernails with sudden fascination. They ate breakfast in comfortable chaos, the easy rhythm of people who'd learned each other's patterns. Daniel talked about calving season starting, the first newborns already arriving. Jo chattered about a book she was reading. Clara made plans for expanding their jerky business now that winter desperation had passed. "Mr. Harrison wants double our usual order," she said. "Says miners at the new site are asking specifically for Frost Ranch product. Can we manage double? If we hire help, which means spending money we barely have." Clara looked at Daniel. "Your call. It's a risk either way." Daniel was quiet, thinking. This was new, him actually considering her input instead of just making decisions alone. "Hire one man, see if it works. But someone trustworthy. Can't afford thieves or trouble. I'll ask around." After breakfast, Daniel caught her elbow as she reached for her coat. "Clara, about the flowers." "What about them?" "They're not nothing, the flowers. They mean something." Her heart kicked. "What do they mean?" "They mean I'm trying. To be more than just—" He struggled for words. "More than just a business arrangement." "I know. I see you trying. And I'm trying too, in my own way." His hand was still on her elbow, warm through the fabric. "We're not very good at this, are we? The romance part." "We're terrible at it. Think we'll get better." "I think we'll figure it out. Eventually." Clara smiled. "Besides, I've had the romance. The pretty words and grand promises turned out to be lies. I'll take awkward flowers and honest trying any day." Daniel's face softened. "You're remarkable. You know that. I'm adequate." "Stop saying that. You're remarkable and stubborn and exactly what this family needed." He leaned down, kissed her forehead gently. "Even if Jo did pick the flowers." "I knew it. She made me promise not to tell. Said it had to be mysterious." Clara laughed, and Daniel pulled her closer just for a moment. Not quite an embrace, but more than casual touch. Progress. Joe's voice came from upstairs. Are you two being romantic without me? That's not fair. Daniel stepped back, shaking his head. Privacy doesn't exist in this house. Never did, won't start now. But his hand found hers and squeezed before he headed back outside. The hired man arrived 2 days later. Jacob Miller, 40-something, weathered and quiet. He'd worked ranches across 3 territories and had references Daniel trusted. Just temporary, Daniel told him. Through calving season. Then we see if we can afford to keep you. Fair enough. Where do I bunk? They set him up in the barn loft, and Jacob proved worth every penny. He worked hard, didn't complain, and had a gentle way with animals that reminded Clara of Daniel. With extra hands, production increased. Clara spent less time in the smokehouse and more time managing the business side. She'd discovered she was good at this, the planning, the negotiating, the turning of raw resources into profit. You missed your calling, Daniel said one evening, watching her update ledgers. Should have been running a business empire instead of teaching school. Women don't run business empires. This woman does. Clara looked up, surprised by the pride in his voice. It's just jerky, Daniel. It's keeping us alive. That's not just anything. Spring calving brought its own crises. A difficult birth in the middle of the night had Daniel pounding on Clara's door, needing her smaller hands again. She delivered a breech calf while he talked her through it, both of them covered in blood and birthing fluids, by the time the calf finally breathed. You keep saving my cattle, Daniel said afterward, both of them sitting exhausted in the barn. Someone has to. Clara. Something in his tone made her look up. I need to tell you something. About Anna. About us. Clara's stomach tightened. All right. When she died, I thought I died too. Thought the part of me that could feel anything good was buried with her. But these last few months... He started again. You've brought something back. Not what I had with Anna. Something different. Something that's just ours. Daniel, you don't have to. I do. Because you need to know. This isn't convenient anymore. This isn't just business or partnership or whatever we called it to make it acceptable. This is... He reached for her hand, held it tight. This is me falling for my wife. Slow and awkward, and probably not how it's supposed to happen. But it's happening anyway. Clara felt tears burn. You're exhausted. It's been a long night. I'm not exhausted enough to lie. I'm falling for you, Clara, and I needed you to know. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything. Just let it be true. Let me feel this without apologizing for it. She squeezed his hand. Okay, it's true. You're allowed. They sat there in the barn while dawn broke outside, 2 people learning how to love after loss, how to build after breaking, how to hope after giving up. But peace never lasted long on a frontier ranch. The trouble came with Thomas Hartley, of course. Men like him didn't disappear just because you ignored them. Clara was in town collecting supplies when she heard the news. Hartley was buying up land surrounding the Frost Ranch, slowly, systematically creating a noose that would eventually strangle them. What's his play? She asked Mr. Harrison, who knew everything that happened in 3 counties. Water rights. If he controls the land around you, he controls your water access. Come summer drought, he can charge whatever he wants, or refuse to allow access at all. Clara felt ice settle in her stomach. That's legal. It's complicated, but yes, mostly. She drove home fast, found Daniel in the south pasture and told him everything. Daniel's face went hard. Son of a bitch. What do? We can't afford to buy land we don't need, can barely afford the land we have. Then we find allies, other ranchers who don't want Hartley controlling everything. I'm not good at asking for help, Clara. Good thing you married someone who is. She organized a meeting at their ranch 2 days later. 6 neighboring families came, all with the same concerns about Hartley's expansion. "He's buying everything he can get his hands on," old Pete Robbins said. "Give him a year, he'll own half the valley." "Not if we band together," Clara argued. "We pool resources, buy strategic parcels, create our own water co-op. He can't strangle all of us at once." "That takes money," Mrs. Henley pointed out. "Money none of us have." "Then we make money, together. We're all producing different things. What if we create a collective sell together, negotiate together, share profits?" Daniel looked at her with something like awe. "You've been thinking about this." "I've been terrified about this." Thinking came after. They spent 3 hours hammering out details. It wasn't perfect, but it was something. A defense against men like Hartley who thought money entitled them to everything. After everyone left, Daniel pulled Clara aside. "That was incredible. You built an alliance in one afternoon. I protected our family. That's different." "It's the same thing. You're remarkable, Clara Frost. Utterly remarkable." This time when he kissed her, it wasn't her forehead. It was soft, tentative, asking permission, even as he gave it. Clara's hands found his shoulders, steadying herself as the world tilted. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, Daniel's eyes were dark with something that made her stomach flutter. "Too fast?" he asked. "No, not fast enough." He laughed, pulled her close again, and kissed her like he meant it. Like she wasn't a substitute or a convenience, but someone he'd chosen deliberately and would choose again. Joe's voice shattered the moment. "Finally, I thought you two would dance around each other forever." They sprang apart. Joe stood on the porch grinning like she'd won a prize. "How long have you been watching?" Daniel demanded. "Long enough. Can we have a celebration for Daddy finally kissing Clara properly?" Joe. "What everyone knows, you love each other. You're the only ones who acted like it was a secret." Clara felt her face flame. Daniel looked equally mortified. But Joe's joy was infectious, and soon all 3 of them were laughing. That night, after Joe was asleep, Daniel knocked on Clara's door. "Can we talk?" She let him in, heart-hammering. He looked nervous, which on a man like Daniel seemed impossible. "About earlier. The kiss." "If you're going to apologize—" "I'm not. I'm asking if I can do it again." Clara felt her breath catch. "Yes." This kiss was different. Slower. Deeper. Like they had all the time in the world to figure out what they meant to each other. His hands tangled in her hair. Hers pressed against his chest, feeling his heart race. When they finally broke apart, both knew something fundamental had shifted. "I should go," Daniel said, but didn't move. "You should. But I don't want to." "I know." "Clara." "We have time, Daniel. We have the rest of our lives to figure this out. Tonight's enough." He kissed her once more, gentle and promising, then forced himself to leave. Clara lay awake for hours, touching her lips, marveling at how quickly everything had changed. 6 months ago, she'd been frozen on a platform waiting to die. Now she was falling in love with her husband and fighting to save a ranch she'd claimed as her own. Life was strange and terrifying and absolutely perfect. Summer brought challenges. Drought threatened. Hartley's machinations continued. The collective faced obstacles nobody had anticipated. But they faced everything together. One evening in late July, Clara found Daniel sitting on the porch watching the sunset. She joined him, and he pulled her close without a word. "Joe asked me something today," he said eventually. "What?" "She asked if I loved you more than I loved her mother." Clara stiffened. "What did you say?" "I said I loved you different. That love isn't a competition or a replacement. That my heart's big enough for both her mother's memory and you." He paused. "Then she asked if we were going to have a baby." Clara's breath stopped. "Oh." "I told her that was between you and me and God. But she said she wouldn't mind. A brother or sister. Someone to share the ranch with when we're gone." Daniel. I'm not asking for anything. Just telling you what she said, what I've been thinking about. He turned to look at her. I know this started as convenience, as survival, but it's more now, at least for me. Clara thought about the life growing inside her that she hadn't told him about yet. About the missed monthly courses. About the nausea she'd been hiding. About the terror and joy of possibly carrying Daniel Frost's child. It's more for me too, she said quietly. Much more. Yeah. They sat there watching the sun paint the sky impossible colors, and Clara thought about Anna. About the woman who'd built this ranch and loved this man and given birth to Joe in a house that was now Clara's home too. I hope she approves, Clara said. Anna, I hope she doesn't hate me for taking her place. You're not taking her place. You're filling the space her absence created. That's different. Daniel kissed her temple. And Anna would love you. Would love how you fight for Joe, for this ranch, for us. She'd call you sister and mean it. How do you know? Because I knew her. And because you're exactly the kind of stubborn, fierce, remarkable woman she was. You two would have been terrifying together. Clara smiled through tears. I wish I'd met her. Me too. But Clara, I'm grateful for you. Grateful you were on that platform. Grateful Joe found you. Grateful you stayed when any sane person would have run. Who said I was sane? Fair point. Fall came with its own beauty. Calves born in spring were grown. The harvest was good. The collective had survived its first year and was actually profitable. And Clara's pregnancy could no longer be hidden. She told Daniel on a cold October morning, his hands shaking as he touched her still flat stomach. You're sure? Doc Morris confirmed it yesterday, due in April. Daniel sat down hard. We're having a baby. Apparently. Clara, His voice broke. Anna died giving birth. What if I'm not Anna, and Doc says I'm healthy, strong, that everything looks good? She knelt in front of him. I'm scared too, but we face this like everything else, together. Together, he echoed, pulling her close. God, Clara, a baby. They told Joe that night. The child's reaction was pure joy mixed with immediate concern. Will you die like Mama? Clara pulled her close. I'm going to do everything possible to stay alive. For you, for your father, for this baby. I promise I'm going to fight. You're good at fighting. I learned from the best. Clara smiled. From a little girl who refused to give up on her father. Joe buried her face in Clara's shoulder and cried happy tears, mixed with scared tears, mixed with relief that her family was growing instead of shrinking. Winter returned. But this winter was different. The house was warm with more than fire. Joe prepared for her 8th birthday. Clara's belly grew. Daniel built a cradle in the barn, working late into the night with wood he'd been saving for something special. The collective held strong. Hartley's attempts to squeeze them out had failed. Other families joined. They became a force in the territory, proof that cooperation could defeat greed. One February evening, Clara found the letter from Thomas Hartley again. The original lies that had brought her here. She carried it to the fireplace where Daniel and Joe were reading together. What's that? Daniel asked. The end of one story and the beginning of another. She threw it into the fire. Watched the paper curl and blacken and disappear. Watched the lies turn to ash. Good riddance, Joe said. Good riddance, Clara agreed. Daniel pulled her close, one hand protective on her swollen belly. Thank you. For what? For believing in us when we couldn't believe in ourselves. For turning disaster into hope. For being exactly who you are. I didn't do anything special. Just stayed when staying seemed impossible. That's everything, Clara. That's absolutely everything. April arrived with rain instead of snow. Clara went into labor during a storm that reminded her of the blizzard she'd arrived in. Daniel paced like a caged animal while Doc Morris worked. Joe sat on the stairs praying to her mother to keep Clara safe. The labor was long and hard and terrifying, but when dawn broke, so did a baby's cry. "It's a boy," Doc announced, healthy and loud. Daniel burst into the room, saw Clara exhausted but alive, saw his son red-faced and squalling, and broke down completely. "You're okay. You're both okay. Told you I'd fight." Clara managed, exhausted but triumphant. Joe crept in, eyes wide. "Can I hold him?" "Gently," Clara said, watching as Joe cradled her brother with fierce tenderness. "What's his name?" Joe asked. Daniel looked at Clara. They'd discussed this, argued about it, finally agreed. "James," Clara said, "after my father, with the middle name Andrew after yours." "James Andrew Frost," Daniel said, testing it. "Welcome to the family, son." The baby fussed, and Joe handed him to Daniel, who held him like he might break. Clara watched her husband cradle their son, watched Joe hover protectively, and felt her heart so full it might burst. This family she'd stumbled into by accident, this life she'd built from desperation and hope, this was everything. Spring turned to summer. James grew fat and happy. Joe became the most devoted sister in Wyoming territory. Daniel split his time between ranching and helping Clara with the baby, learning how to be a father again. One evening in June, almost exactly a year since Clara had sat frozen on that platform, the whole valley gathered at the Frost Ranch for a celebration. The collective was expanding. Hartley had left the territory after a scandal involving fraud, and the Frost family was thriving. Clara stood on the porch watching neighbors dance, children play, life happening in all its chaotic beauty. Daniel came up behind her arms, wrapping around her waist. Happy. Ridiculously. Even though this isn't what you planned. Even though you ended up with a broke rancher instead of your promised wealthy husband. Clara turned in his arms. "I ended up with everything I needed and nothing I expected. That's better than any plan." "I love you, Clara Frost. Should have said it months ago, but I'm saying it now. I love you." "I love you too, even when you're impossible, even when the ranch is falling apart, even when—" He kissed her, stopping the words. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. Joe appeared with James in her arms. "Stop being romantic and come dance. Baby brother wants to see his parents acting ridiculous." "We're always ridiculous," Daniel pointed out. "True. But tonight you're happy ridiculous. That's different." They went to join the party, this family of four that had been built from broken pieces. Clara thought about the woman who'd waited on that platform for a lie. That woman was gone. In her place was someone stronger. Someone who'd learned that the best lives weren't planned, they were fought for. Years later, when James was grown and Joe had children of her own, they'd ask Clara to tell the story. How she came to Wyoming. How she found her family. And she'd tell them the truth. That she'd answered an advertisement for a husband who didn't exist. That she'd waited 5 days in a blizzard for hope to die. That a desperate child had saved her by asking an impossible question. That she'd married a broken man, raised a grieving child, saved a failing ranch, and built a life from absolutely nothing. That she'd learned love came in many forms, fierce and quiet, planned and accidental, first and second, and everything between. That the wrong train had delivered her exactly where she belonged. And when they asked if she'd do it all again, if she could go back and choose differently, Clara would smile and say what she always said. Every single time. Because that was the truth. Every frozen moment on that platform, every desperate decision, every impossible choice had led her here, to this family, this life, this love, and she wouldn't change a single moment of it, not one.